What you're about to watch is a real forehand analysis I made for a YouTube subscriber. While watching this analysis, if you think to yourself, man, I'd love to get analyzed by Ryan, then click the first line in the description. You can also click the link that's in the first comment. Enjoy the analysis, and you've got this. Hey, Yang, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this video analysis lesson for you on your forehand. So before we get to your areas for improvement, let me go over a couple things that are really good about your forehand so you can keep doing them. And first is prepping the racket with both hands. You know it, I know it, we should be doing this, and you're doing it. It's awesome. This is gonna help you to coil, and then obviously later on, uncoil. The second thing I want to show you, which I love, is the fact that you have your left hand high as you're striking. This is what I call wave to the opponent as you strike the ball. And it just ensures that you do uncoil. So it's pretty cool. The first idea is that you coil, but then the second idea is you need to uncoil. And when the non-hitting hand stays up and it kind of looks like you're waving, see if your hand is in that circle. Yeah, pretty close. I almost drew it. But your left hand is right there. Awesome stuff. So keep coiling and uncoiling the way you already are, because it's helping you to have a very good forehand. All right. Here are your areas for improvement, Yang. So number one, we got to talk about your grip. Number two, that your racket is open at the top of the swing. Number three, your racket is on edge at the bottom of the swing. Number four, and you mentioned this in your email, that you have a flat hit. Number five, your strings are facing backward after contact. You don't do this every time, but you do it enough that it needs to be addressed. And then number six, you have a low left hand during the finish. All right, let's get started. All right, number one, your grip. So the first thing we want to know is the numbers of the panels. And this is important just so you can communicate with people, and you talk to a different coach, or you talk to me, or you talk to a friend, and you start talking about the panels. You had mentioned that you thought that your knuckle was between 2 and 3. And actually it's between 3 and 4. Let me show you what I mean. So in your email, you mentioned 2 and 3. Well, we've got the base knuckle and the heel pad. And right now, your knuckle is right here. And that is between 3 and 4. So 1 is the very top, then 2 is here, and then 3 is there. There's 4. So this is where your knuckle is currently. But your heel pad is on 3. What I'm going to suggest, and I'll show you this in a moment here, but with your hand, I'm going to suggest that we move you over to a semi-western. I'm going to suggest that we take the knuckle and the heel pad, and they've got to be on the same place, both on panel number 4, the semi-western. Let me show you how to do this. So let's take the grip like that, and then, oops, let's see if I can draw this. Okay. So your knuckle, you're 100% right, is on the corner because of 3 and 4. Now, you called it 2 and 3, but it's really 3 and 4. So that is panel number 3. This is the Eastern forehand grip. And you can see if I just take an arrow and I just go straight down, notice it doesn't go through that circle because that's where your knuckle is. So your knuckle is on the corner between 3 and 4. The problem is, this is where your heel pad is. Your heel pad is on 3. The way you get your heel pad on the same panel as where your knuckle is, which is what we want, is to have a larger trigger finger. So currently, you are holding on like this, okay? And actually your trigger finger is smaller. You can see there's very, very little trigger finger right there. Now watch what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna open up my hand and I'm gonna rotate my hand counterclockwise. What I'm doing is I'm moving the heel pad, which is like here, but obviously on the padding, right? I'm moving it to the right. So this part of my hand is going to move that way, watch. And look what that is going to do to the two fingers right here. Right now, you're like this, where there's no trigger finger or very little trigger finger. It's not that it's no, but it's definitely a small trigger finger. I'm going to move the heel of my hand that way. And now when I grab on, I've got a big trigger finger. I have plenty of space. I also want you to move your entire hand to the right. So you can see like my racket is up against the wall here, right? So this is panel number 3. The side of the racket that's facing you is panel number 3. Panel 1 is the very top. And then panel 2 is right here. It's a continental. And then panel 3 is here. So right now you have your knuckle currently on 3.5, but your heel pad is on 3. So I want you to open up your hand. Notice I'm holding the racket with my left hand. I want you to rotate your hand like this, so you're moving the heel pad over to where your knuckle is. Then grab on, you'll have a nice big trigger, and then just rotate your whole hand the tiniest bit to the right. Watch, I'm not changing the racket. I'm just rotating my entire hand to the right. That's going to get me on a semi-western. That's going to be my knuckle and heel pad both on panel number 4. And you can see the difference with my forehand and yours. Look right there. You can really see the black of the grip, where I could put, another finger. I have space for a 6th finger between my index and middle finger. Where with you, there's definitely not enough space to add a finger between the index and middle finger. So here's what I mean by rotating your hand counterclockwise. And really, without that grip change, Yang, you're going to struggle to hit the topspin that you're looking for. Just because you're so close to like an Eastern, and just the technique that you're currently using, it just leads to you just hitting really flat and not being able to spin the ball. So I'm going to highly suggest that you work on hitting with the semi-western grip. Now, when you hit the semi-western grip, it is going to be critical that you aim high over the net. So when you adjust the grip, I want you thinking of hitting the ball 10 feet over the net. I want you to hit the ball, it goes 10 feet over the net, and then comes back down. That is what I want you to attempt. Because if you try to hit the ball, like look at this forehand. If you hold your semi-western grip and you hit the ball 2 feet over the net, or you aim 2 feet over the net, you are going to bury that ball into your own service line, and the ball might even bounce like a ground rule double over the net. So you have to counteract a grip change with the proper height over the net. And when you aim high enough like this, the ball will probably go 1.5 feet over the net. But you're going to have to mentally think, okay, I'm hitting the ball 10 feet over the net in order to make that occur. I want you to use a semi-western grip. I think it is the best of both worlds when it comes to power and control and spin and really depth and everything that you're looking for. It's the grip that I use, semi-western, and I truly think it is the best grip, especially for someone your level of play. Number 2, your racket is open at the top of the swing. All right, this is a major issue. This needs to be addressed. And I know you will, and I know you'll fix it. You cannot get away with your strings facing up like this. When your strings are facing up in this manner, it really hurts your ability to hit topspin. Let me put you next to, let's say, Alcaraz. Now, when he turns, just like you, he's got both hands on the racket. But notice when he turns, his strings are pointing down, which is obviously different than what you're doing. It is critical that you have your strings pointing down at this moment and not pointing up, because this position has a trickle down effect where downstream in the swing, your swing has to make up for the fact that your racket is open. and I'll explain in a moment, but typically when there's a mistake, like, oh, I'm hitting really flat, what should I do at contact? It's like, no, you got to go upstream. You got to go farther, whether it's the grip or the turn or the drop. There's something happening, and that's exactly what's happening with you. And it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the grip. It's a combination of this turn and the drop, which we'll talk about in a moment. I want you turning on all of your forehands with your racket like this, with your strings pointing down. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But you'll see on the next forehand, watch. He turns, racket is closed. I don't care which forehand you look at. Here it is again. His racket is closed, right? Strings are facing down. This is how you're going to, yes, keep the swing small, which you mentioned in your email, but it allows you to hit topspin. All right, now, how do you do this? How do you have your strings pointing down? The key lies in the hand-elbow-shoulder relationship. So let's look at my forehand. You'll see I'm turning with both hands on the racket, just like you. But I want you to look at this position right here. My strings, just like Alcaraz, are pointing down. Yours pointing up. Notice my hand, my elbow, and my shoulder are all the same height, or relatively the same height. You have your elbow lower than your shoulder and your hand higher than both your shoulder and your elbow. What you need to focus on is having your elbow much higher and the hand a little bit lower. The relationship between your forearm and your racket is excellent. In fact, let's draw this and measure the angle between your forearm and the racket. So let's measure mine now. Look at that. Look how close we are in angle. I mean, 116, 108, there's no difference. There's no difference whatsoever. But you can see my armpit. We cannot see your armpit because your elbow is too low. Your elbow's low and your hand goes up. Watch how you turn like this. Like, this is pretty good, right? You're like, even right here, everything's looking okay. But watch how your hand rises up. Well, you move, but you got the idea. Look at your hand right now is below shoulder level. So here's the line of your shoulder. Your hand is below your shoulder right there, but watch, your hand is now higher than your shoulder. That's what's opening up the racket. I want you to focus, Yang, on having your right armpit exposed to the camera. And the way you do that is by raising the elbow. The focus has to be on your right elbow. You have to think of raising your right elbow. See, when you raise your elbow, the hand goes for a ride. When you raise your elbow, the hand goes with it. But just because you raise your hand doesn't mean the elbow goes with it. That's just the way it works. So I don't want you to think of, oh, my hand needs to be up here. I mean, your hand is so much higher than your elbow. And you can see mine when I turn straight across. This is what you want. The focus then has to be on your elbow going up. So here's my favorite player of all time, Sampras. Look at his elbow. And watch how his elbow, it's like he's elbowing someone in the chin standing behind him. Like he's trying to elbow them, right? He's elbowing them in the shoulder. And then look at that right there. Look at all of this space under his armpit. He can obviously, or somebody standing behind him, could obviously see his armpit. That's what you need to show. Notice he has his strings pointing down. Now, what does this lead to? The grip and the open racket with the hand and the too high and the elbow too low leads to this right here. This ultimately is why you got this lesson with me. It all boils down to the fact that your racket is on edge at this position, at this moment. Now, this is partially addressed with the grip. Yes, the grip is going to rotate your strings, and your racket naturally is going to be pointing more down. But I really want you to focus on your palm. Your palm currently faces straight over. If you notice, here your palm is facing up, and now your palm is to the side. You're going to have to focus with your strings facing down. You're going to have to feel like your palm is also facing down. Here's Sinner. Check out where his strings are facing. So his palm is facing down. Your strings are to the right. Your palm is facing to the right. Your palm is a guide for where your strings are pointing. As you tilt your palm toward the ground, your strings will point more to the ground. And it doesn't matter what grip you're using. Yes, with an Eastern, your strings and your palm face exactly the same direction. But even if you have a semi-Western grip, or even a full Western, the feeling at the bottom here needs to be that your palm is facing down, because that's going to get your strings to point down. Now, number 4, you have a flat hit. This is because of the grip, the open racket when you turn, and the racket on edge in the back. So you're forced to hit very flat into the back. When you strike the ball, you really compress without a lot of brush. The semi-Western grip, by the way, getting that knuckle and heel pad with that bigger trigger finger, oh my gosh. Like getting that hand to be a little bit more counterclockwise, slightly bigger trigger finger, and then getting the whole hand over more to the right to get onto panel number 4. Oh man, I wish I could be on court when you first try it because of the spin that you're going to be able to produce. Now on the right here, I'm showing you a drill that I want you to practice. This is from a YouTube video I made last summer. I want you to notice, by the way, I've got a semi-Western grip. Strings are pointing down. My palm is facing down. Watch how I'm purposely hitting the south pole of the ball with the top frame of the racket. I'm not trying to hit the strings at all. I am trying to hit the south pole of the ball, trying to send the ball straight up and have it like land on my head. And you can see, I hit the ball straight up into the air. I swing up, over the shoulder, yada, yada. Okay. When you do this, it is going to get you to close the racket and swing low to high with your strings pointing forward. You want your strings forward as the racket goes up. And this drill gives you that. You are hitting so flat into the back of the ball that you've really lost the strategy that comes, or it's not at your disposal, I should say. The cross-court passing shot where you can dip it into the service box, a topspin lob up over someone's head, dipping the ball to someone's feet, like really spinning it with high RPM. You don't have that because of what we already talked about to this point. So with your grip, with that high elbow and the racket closed the entire time, with the closed racket face in the back, I want you to purposely hit the south pole of the ball, and the goal is to send the ball straight up into the air. Here's Halep. You see a racket closed at 45 degrees. And look at the brush up. If you look here, there's contact. So there's the height of contact. Her racket is below that, and her racket's going to go like this. Look at her racket go up. So when she hits the ball, her strings are pointing forward as the racket's going up. That's what's imparting the topspin on the ball. You can't get the racket below the ball the way you need to because you're not closing the racket. Only players who close the racket can get below the ball enough to swing low to high. Because your racket is on edge, like this, compared to her, You could put a coin right on the edge of your racket. You're forced to smack into the back. You can't get as far below the ball as you'd like or as much as you'd need to in order to rip the ball with spin. So I want you to close the face, which is going to allow you to brush up the back. But I want you to try to hit like this. I want you to try to hit the south pole of the ball, sending the ball straight up. By doing that and having that be your swing thought, you're going to close the racket face. I can tell you that right now. Getting below the ball, strings down. And then it's going to force you not to swing so like flat into the back, but more up, putting the spin on the ball that you're desiring. Number 5. I wonder if you are aware of this. Yang, you are currently, and I would say it's about half the time, pointing your strings to the back fence when you're done. Or I shouldn't say when you're done, during the follow through, like during the extension. Notice after you hit the ball, right here, the side of the strings that we are looking at currently, those are the strings that just hit the ball. The strings that hit the ball should not be pointing to the back fence. Here's another one, by the way. Look at that racket. That's because of your elbow. You lift that elbow up like Sampras. Now your strings are going to be facing down like Alcaraz and Sampras and Diago and Federer. Like it's just how you want to turn. But watch. Yeah, look at your racket. Put a coin right on the edge. Watch your strings after you hit the ball. It's a little blurry, but watch. Your strings are pointing directly to the back fence. So here's Joker, obviously. And notice after he hits the ball, I like to tell people, like, point your strings at the service line, basically in front of you. When you're done hitting, the racket should go above your hand and then point to the service line. You're hitting, strings are now facing, like, see these lights right here on the next court, maybe 2 courts over even? Right now, your strings are facing to those lights to your left, 1 or 2 courts over. And then it just keeps going, and your strings are pointing to the back. You will never see Alcaraz in that position. You will never see Djokovic in that position. I don't care. Name the pro. You are never going to see them in that position. That is a position that will sometimes occur in your forehand, and it is because of what we've mentioned. The grip, open racket on the turn, not closing at the bottom. This is a downstream, because it's caused by something upstream. It's a trickle-down domino effect that occurs when you're trying to push the ball and guide the ball and not spin it. You can see where the racket's, obviously look at the racket closed, right? When the racket's closed like this, then you can really, I didn't mean to draw that arrow, but you can really spin the ball. Where the racket's below the hand to above the hand, he's got the proper relationship between the knuckle and the heel pad, and he can make that move. That is simply not a move that you can make because your knuckle and heel pad are not in the same place, and you don't have a semi-Western grip the way he does. So your forehand, Yang, is going to be an absolute beast when you make that grip change. Because without the grip change, really nothing that we've talked about to this point is going to be possible. Carlos again. Notice hand, elbow, shoulder, all relatively the same height. Strings are pointing down. Racket is closed. Palm is facing down. Watch his racket. By the way, like you, left hand is up high at contact, which is awesome. But look at his racket. Like right here, his strings are facing the service line in front of him. He's not pointing the strings like I wish I could draw an arrow at the camera, but that's impossible. But he's making that move. We never see the strings that hit the ball. You should never, on a topspin forehand, never see the strings that hit the ball on the upward path of the racket from here to here. Those strings that just means you're pushing and you have no movement of the racket. It's what I call 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So we've got a clock here. All right, here's 12, 9, 6, 3. So his racket's at 4 o'clock. And now his racket is at 12 o'clock. So while the racket makes this move, the strings, we never see the ball, never see the strings. Now, like right here, we see the strings. Like those are the strings that actually hit the ball right there. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about during the extension or like as the racket's going up. That's on the follow through where like right there you can see them. Of course, that's fine because you're going back to a ready position. That's not really part of the hit. But this is all part of the stroke. And that move, you've got to have your strings facing the net or facing the service line in front of you. That's how you're going to hit amazing topspin, especially when you couple that with attempting to hit the bottom of the ball with the top edge of the racket. And number 6, you have a low left hand during the finish. Now, this is small potatoes, but I think especially for you, this is going to be important. When you're done, you have a low left hand. Now, it was up at contact, which is amazing, right? Like, I wish every single tennis player in the world had your left hand at contact. Everyone would be so much better. But the fact that your left hand goes down, this is like taking, if their forehand was perfect except for this, you would give them an A. And if they could have their left hand high the whole time, then you would give them an A+. All right. So if you fix everything to this point that we've talked about and you don't have this, you would still have an A. But I'm going to suggest as a rec player, as an amateur player who doesn't always have, like we do not always have the ability to get away with the stuff that Jannik Sinner can get away with and Novak Djokovic can get away with. I'm not going to speak for you, but Alcaraz has more athleticism in his left pinky than I do in my entire body. These guys are so freaking athletic. They're so powerful. It's insane. So they can sometimes get away with things that we can't. You will be so much more consistent with your forehand if both hands are up high over your left shoulder and you catch the racket. Here I am with Sampras. I look like a Smurf next to him here. I want to look a little bigger next to him. But check out my turn. I'm going to keep pounding this into your head. Hand, elbow, shoulder, all the same height. Racket is closed. Left hand high like you. I want you to look at his finish, catching the racket high in his left hand. Look at my racket, catching the racket high in my left hand. Look at the armpit exposed. Dominic Thiem, racket closed, by the way. Serena, racket closed. Catching the racket over the left shoulder. Thiem, catching the racket high over the left shoulder. Look at the space under that right armpit. Completely exposed right armpit and catching high in the left hand. Now, the argument against this, which is a perfectly valid argument, is, well, Ryan, they don't do this when they play matches. Well, then why do they do it when they're practicing? Right? That's always the question I want to ask people. Well, why are they doing it in practice if it's not something good to do? It's because they're going back to their foundational swings. And by the way, you and I in our matches wish we hit the ball and struck the ball as well as Dominic Thiem and Serena Williams will do in their hitting sessions. We would dream to hit the ball like Dominic Thiem in our matches, in the way they do our hitting. If we started hitting our forehands the way these pros do in their practice sessions, we would be the best player in our state. We'd be the best player in America, right? It's just how it works. So I want you catching the racket high in the left hand. It's just giving your racket a place to go that is not going to mess anything up. It's almost like, I have 2 kids. They're older now, but
you'd have to put them in a timeout. They're 13 and 11, so no timeouts needed, thank goodness. But when they're really young, sometimes like, hey, just sit in the chair. You're a little wild right now. Daddy needs a break, right? It's the same thing here. It's almost like it's not that you want them in a timeout. It's that you don't want them doing what they were doing. So it's not that I want you catching the racket in your left hand. It's that catching the racket in the left hand, Yang, is so benign that it'll never mess you up. It's that if you don't do that, it can mess you up. It can have you do a windshield wiper where you swing like I'll draw this on team where you go up and then down. You finish like I taught a lesson on Friday for a guy, made an analysis for him, and his forehand, he finished it down behind his left knee. Guy couldn't hit a forehand, but though he was trying like all the typical stuff you see on Instagram and YouTube, right? And so I taught him this. I'm like, you need to do what the pros do when they're practicing. Like, there's a reason why they practice this way. There's a reason why Serena isn't finishing behind her left hip, yet she's got, 23 Grand Slams. Like, why is that? It's because, first off, if you swing this way, the ball doesn't know that you're not Serena. So your ball is gonna be really good. And also they're trying to have great technique so that when they go out and play a match, their technique is good enough that it survives a match, right? If you're sloppy in practice, then you're going to be really sloppy in a match. So they're like picture perfect in practice. And then they get a little sloppy, but still good enough in a match that it can, that they can handle it. So I want you catching the racket high over your left shoulder. And here's what that looks like for me. Catching the racket. Look at all the space under my left armpit. And you can see I just hold it. I just hit and I just hold until the ball bounces. Ball bounces, then I go back. Watch it again. Hand, elbow, shoulder, all the same height. Rackets closed, catching high, and I hold it till the ball bounces. That's what I want you to practice. All right, Yang, here are your forehand solutions. Number one, I want you to rotate your hand slightly counterclockwise for a slightly bigger trigger finger. You're still going to wrap that finger around. There's just going to be more space between your index and middle finger naturally, because now you're going to get your knuckle and heel pad in the same place. One thing you notice, by the way, with Djokovic is he was able, from that side view where I showed you he pointed his strings to the service line, it was very easy for him to drop the racket head below his hand and then have the racket go above his hand. That's that like 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock movement I showed on the clock. That's not really possible when your knuckle and heel pad are not in the same place. You have your heel higher, and that just puts the racket more next to your hand. It's very difficult to get the racket below your hand, and that doesn't allow you to make that move. So that move is now possible once you make that slightly counterclockwise movement. And it's slight, by the way. I mean very slight. But it's all that's needed to be able to do that. You'll also notice I say turn the whole hand over to panel 4 for a semi-western grip. So once you turn the hand counterclockwise, then the entire hand is going to wrap farther around the racket to get over to panel number 4. It's going to make it easy to close the racket and hit topspin, yada, yada. We already know. All right. Number 2, your hand, elbow, and shoulder should all be the same height when you turn. Focus on your elbow. That's why I showed you Sampras, kind of like elbowing someone. If you focus on the hand, then the elbow stays down and your racket's open, which is what you're doing. So when you turn on your forehand, really expose your armpit to the camera behind you. That is how you're going to get the racket face closed on the turn. You saw that with me. You saw that with Alcaraz. Your racket was wide open at that moment. Number 3 should be much easier to do once you got the grip and the hand, elbow, and shoulder all the same height, which is to tilt the palm toward the ground at the bottom of the swing. In your email, you mentioned, and that means you know that you need to be closing your racket face. But just knowing that isn't enough. Like you could see that you weren't. So you've got to really think about at the bottom of the swing, and even as you approach the ball, having your palm face down. You couple that with the grip, oh man, your racket face is going to be closed just like the pros. Number 4, I want you to attempt hitting the bottom of the ball, hit the south pole with the top of the frame. So you're going to be swinging from underneath the ball, hitting the bottom of the ball, swinging straight up. That's what you're going to attempt. Now here's what's going to happen when you try it 5 times. 2 of the times you're going to do it perfectly. You're going to hit the frame, the ball's going to shoot straight up in the air, or maybe land on your head. The other 2, you'll swing and miss, right? It's too hard to hit perfectly every time, hit the frame. But 1 out of 5, you're going to spin it perfectly. And the ball is going to arc. I will suggest, again, I forgot to mention this with the grip, that you aim really high, right? So you're going to be getting a ton of spin. So you need to aim very high over the net, much higher than you typically do. Because typically when you hit the ball that high over the net with no spin, the ball goes sailing long. So try to hit the bottom of the ball. Now you'll truly feel what it's like to do that Halep swing where the racket was closed and she swung and brushed up the back of the ball. Number 5, show your strings to the service line or net after contact. So that's when the racket's going from 4 o'clock to 3 to 2 to 1 to 12, right? Now, when you're doing that, the strings are facing the net. That's going to make sure that you're not pushing the ball. Your strings hitting and pointing to the back fence behind you is all a result of everything that happened. That's why you can't always blame what you're seeing. You have to blame something upstream. If I have a headache, it's not because I have an ibuprofen deficiency, even though that's what I'm going to take to get rid of the headache. But no doctor's going to say, "Oh man, you're low on iron, and your liver numbers are coming back, and you're also low on ibuprofen, so you need to be popping Advil." Like, no one's going to say that, right? So what you have to do is you have to realize, okay, I'm doing that push. And it's like, it's literally just pushing the ball over the net with no spin. And that's what ends up having the strings face the back fence. You didn't do it every time. I would say you did it half the time, but you should never do it. And moving the racket from 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock with your strings facing the net while you're doing that, it's really going to put the kind of like the bow, it's like a wrapper, like for Christmas, you put a bow on a wrap, and you wrap it and you put a bow on it. That really puts the bow on the top spin. Now, when it comes to the swing path, that's what number 6 is all about. I want you to catch high in your left hand. You saw me do it. You saw Serena do it. You saw a team do it. You saw Sampras do it. Does Jack Sock do that? No. But Nadal is up above the head, so what's the difference, right? Jack Sock is finishing low and Kyrgios is finishing by that hip, but Nadal's finishing 70% of the time up above his head. So let's split the difference and let's finish high over the left shoulder like Sampras, catching the racket. It makes sure that your finish is benign. It means that it's not going to mess you up ever. Catching the racket over your shoulder is not going to mess you up. If you're driving the ball, if you want to finish a little bit lower by the shoulder, kind of we saw what Alcaraz was doing, that's fine. But anything that's more belly button level or lower at contact, finish high like Sampras. Yang, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this video analysis lesson on your forehand. Look, you got to go in the order in which I taught you. First and foremost, the grip. Without it, all the other ideas fall apart. You also have to make sure that you're aiming high enough. So get the grip over and start hitting moon balls. Get on the ball machine, and I want you to start off with topspin lobs as the first shot you hit. And what you'll notice is if you don't do that, the ball is going to roll into the net. Mark my word. I've been teaching for almost 3 decades. Trust me. If you don't counteract that grip change with the intentions of hitting high, you're going to be bowling, right? The ball is just going to roll into the net. So you got to have the intentions that you're going to hit the ball high over the net. But work on these ideas in the order in which I taught you, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. Yang, you got this.